They say the worst betrayals don't happen in a single moment. They happen slowly, over time, in the quiet spaces between conversations, in the small shifts that seem insignificant until they become undeniable. That's exactly how it happened with Lisa and me. I remember the moment I realized something was wrong, but if I'm being honest, I had felt it creeping in long before that night. It started with little things, how she would turn away from me in bed instead of curling up next to me like she used to, how her phone never left her hand but always faced downward, how she stopped telling me about her day. It was the kind of change that happens so gradually you don't notice it until one day you wake up and realize that the person lying next to you isn't the same one you married. Or maybe they are, and you're just now seeing them clearly for the first time. It was a Friday evening when the silence between us finally broke. We had just finished dinner. Well, I had finished dinner. Lisa barely touched hers, picking at her food like it was a chore. I tried to make small talk, commenting on how work had been rough that week, but she just nodded absent-mindedly, her mind clearly elsewhere. Then, without warning, she let out a heavy sigh and set her fork down. "Mark," she said, her voice flat, rehearsed. "I don't think I'm happy anymore." I blinked, the words hitting me like a punch I hadn't seen coming. "What do you mean?" She avoided my eyes, swirling her wine glass in slow circles. "I don't know. I just feel like something's missing. Like we're just going through the motions. I need space to figure things out." There it was. The dreaded phrase, "I need space." The polite way of saying, "I want to leave, but I'm not ready to deal with the consequences yet." I felt the panic rise in my chest, but I forced it down. "Lisa, we've been together for almost a decade. Of course things feel different than they did when we were younger, but that doesn't mean we're broken. It means we have to work at it." She exhaled through her nose, shaking her head. "That's just it, Mark. It shouldn't feel like work. Love should be effortless." Effortless? My hands clenched under the table. What kind of fantasy was she living in? Love wasn't effortless. It was a choice, a commitment. You don't just throw it away the moment it stops being easy. Something about the way she spoke, the distant way she looked at me, made my stomach tighten. "Is there someone else?" I asked. She hesitated. That hesitation told me everything I needed to know. Finally, she shook her head. "No, of course not." Liar. I wanted to press her, to demand the truth, but I knew it wouldn't matter. If she had already checked out of our marriage, then nothing I said would bring her back. That night, she slept on the couch. She claimed it was because she needed time to think, but I knew better. It wasn't about thinking. It was about creating distance. It was about preparing herself for the inevitable. And sure enough, 3 days later, she packed a bag and told me she was going to stay with her sister for a while. I didn't fight her. I didn't beg. I just stood there in the doorway, watching her walk out of our home, feeling a strange mix of heartbreak and numbness. I told myself I wouldn't chase her. If she wanted to leave, I wouldn't stop her. But I had no idea how much worse things were about to get. The first night without Lisa in the house felt strange. It wasn't just her absence, it was the silence, the emptiness, the weight of something missing. The couch where she usually sat had an untouched throw blanket folded neatly over the armrest. Her favorite mug was still in the sink from the morning before. I found myself staring at the little details she had left behind, wondering if they meant anything, wondering if she had hesitated before walking out that door or if she had been relieved to finally go. I didn't text her. I didn't call. I told myself that if she needed space, I would give it to her. Maybe, just maybe, she would realize what she was losing. But deep down, I knew. On the third day, I saw the first crack in her lie. Lisa had told me she was staying with her sister, but that morning, I ran into her sister at the grocery store. She looked surprised to see me, but more than that, she looked awkward. Uncomfortable. "Hey, Mark," she said, shifting her weight from foot to foot like she wanted to be anywhere else. "Hey," I replied casually, trying to ignore the sinking feeling in my gut. "How's Lisa holding up?" Her brows furrowed. "Lisa? What do you mean?" My heart stopped. "She's been staying with you," I said carefully, watching her expression. A pause. Just a second too long. "Oh, yeah, right." She forced a smile, nodding quickly. "She's been, just figuring things out." Liar. I could see it in her face. She didn't want to be caught in the middle of whatever this was. I gave a short nod, not wanting to make a scene, but inside, I was unraveling. If Lisa wasn't staying with her sister, then where was she? That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the conversation over and over again, trying to convince myself that maybe I was overthinking it. Maybe her sister had just been caught off guard. But something told me otherwise. By the time the sun came up, I had made a decision. I needed to know the truth, and I was going to find it. The moment of truth. I knew Lisa's routines like the back of my hand. If she wasn't with her sister, there was only one other place she could be, somewhere she felt comfortable, somewhere she could let her guard down. And that's how I found myself sitting outside the apartment complex where her best friend, Emily, lived. It felt ridiculous, waiting there like some kind of detective in my own life. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was about to uncover something I wasn't meant to see. An hour passed, then another. Then, just as I was about to leave, I saw her. She wasn't alone. She was with him, a man I had never seen before. Tall, well-dressed, the kind of guy who looked like he had never had a bad day in his life. He walked beside her, his hand grazing the small of her back, an intimate, familiar touch. She leaned into him, laughing at something he said, completely at ease. My stomach twisted. She looked happy, happier than she had been with me in months. Maybe longer. I felt my pulse in my ears, a dull roar of disbelief and anger and heartbreak all tangled together. I should have confronted her. I should have stormed up to her, demanded answers. But I didn't. Instead, I sat there in my car, watching my wife disappear into another man's apartment, and realized that I had already lost her. She had just been too much of a coward to admit it, and I had been too blind to see it. The aftermath. I drove home in a daze, my thoughts colliding like a car crash. Every late night, every excuse, every hollow apology. It had all been leading to this. By the time I stepped into our empty house, something inside me had shifted. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to cry. I had spent months, maybe years, chasing after Lisa, trying to be what she wanted, trying to fix what she refused to work on. I was done. She had walked out on our marriage. Now, it was time for me to walk away from her. But what I didn't expect, what I never saw coming, was that the moment I stopped chasing her, was the moment she came running back. I didn't sleep that night. I barely even moved from the chair in the living room, just staring at nothing, replaying everything in my head like a bad movie I couldn't turn off. Lisa had moved on. That much was clear. The way she leaned into him, the way she smiled. Those weren't the actions of someone who was just figuring things out. They were the actions of someone who had already made their decision. And yet, she hadn't told me. She had lied, made excuses, fed me the same tired lines about needing space. Maybe she thought I wouldn't find out. Maybe she thought she could ease me into it so that when she finally officially ended things, I wouldn't put up a fight. Well, she got part of that right. I wasn't going to fight for her. Not anymore. By morning, something inside me had settled. A cold, sharp clarity that I hadn't felt in a long time. If she wanted to be with someone else, I wasn't going to stand in her way. But I wasn't going to be the fool waiting in the background either. So I made my decision. I wasn't just going to move on. I was going to erase her. Cutting the cord. I started with the house. Lisa had always loved making our home ours. She had picked out the furniture, the decor, the little touches that made it feel lived in. But now, all I saw was her absence. Every framed photo, every decorative pillow, every little reminder of her needed to go. So I packed it all up. Every picture of us. Gone. Every trinket she had bought on our vacations. In a box. The perfume bottle she left on the dresser, the one that used to drive me crazy because she never put the cap back on, into the trash. By the time I was done, it looked like a completely different house. And for the first time in a long time, I could actually breathe. Then, I did something I never thought I'd do. I blocked her number. Not because I was angry. Not because I wanted to punish her. But because I refused to be the guy who sat around waiting for scraps of attention from someone who had already thrown him away. Lisa had made her choice. Now it was my turn. The unexpected call. A week passed. A week of silence. A week of rediscovering who I was without her. It was easier than I expected. I started going to the gym again, something I hadn't done in years. I reconnected with old friends, started saying yes to invitations instead of making excuses. I even picked up a new hobby, photography, something I had always been interested in but never made time for. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about Lisa. And then, out of nowhere, she called. The number was unfamiliar, but the second I picked up, I recognized her voice. Mark. Her tone was hesitant, almost nervous. I didn't say anything at first. I just let the silence stretch between us. I tried texting you, but I think you blocked me, she continued. I exhaled slowly. Yeah, I did. She was quiet for a moment. Oh, more silence. Finally, she sighed. I wanted to talk. Can we meet up? I almost laughed. After everything, now she wanted to talk? Now, after she had left, after she had moved on with someone else, after I had finally started to rebuild my life, now she was reaching out? But I wasn't the same person I was a week ago. So I said the one thing I knew she wasn't expecting. No, Lisa. We have nothing to talk about. She stammered, caught off guard. Wait, Mark, please. Just one conversation. I hung up, and for the first time since this nightmare started, I smiled, because I knew exactly what was happening. She had thought I would chase her forever, that I would be there, waiting, ready to take her back the second things didn't work out with her new guy. But when I stopped chasing, she realized what she had lost, and I had no intention of letting her back in. But Lisa? She wasn't ready to give up that easily. And what she did next, I never saw coming. Blocking Lisa was supposed to be the end of it. I had told myself I was done, that I wasn't going to be some pathetic guy waiting around for a woman who had already walked out on me. I had accepted the reality of what happened, packed away the memories, and started moving forward. But Lisa? She wasn't ready to let go. It started with the missed calls. At first, I ignored them. I figured she would get the message and move on, the same way she had so easily moved on from me. But Lisa wasn't the kind of person who handled rejection well. I should have known she wouldn't just accept it. The calls kept coming from different numbers. Some I recognized, some I didn't. Then the text started. Mark, please just talk to me. I made a mistake. I need to see you. It's important. At first, I didn't even read them. I told myself that whatever she had to say, it didn't matter anymore. But then, on a late Saturday night, I made the mistake of opening one. It was a picture of us. An old one, probably 5 years ago, taken on our anniversary trip to California. We were smiling, arms wrapped around each other, the ocean stretching behind us. She had captioned it. Did none of this mean anything to you? I clenched my jaw. The nerve of her. After everything she had done, after walking out of my life like I was disposable, she had the audacity to guilt-trip me? I almost blocked her again. Almost deleted the message without responding. But something about it, something about her desperation bothered me. Because Lisa wasn't the type to beg. And that's when I started wondering, why now? The truth she didn't expect me to find. The next morning, I did something I never thought I'd do. I called Emily, Lisa's best friend, the one who had covered for her, the one who had probably known all along where she really was the night she left. She picked up on the second ring. Mark. She sounded surprised, hesitant. Hey, Emily, I said, keeping my tone casual. Look, I don't want to drag you into this, but Lisa's been blowing up my phone, and I don't get it. She made her choice. She's with someone else, right? Silence. It stretched long enough that I knew I had hit a nerve. Finally, Emily sighed. Mark, I really shouldn't be getting involved in this. But you already are, I pointed out. So you might as well tell me the truth. Another sigh. Then, finally, she's not with him anymore. I felt my stomach tighten. What do you mean? Emily hesitated. They broke up. A slow, bitter smile crept onto my face. Of course. I should have seen it coming. She had left me because she thought the grass was greener. Because she thought there was something better waiting for her. And now? Now that it hadn't worked out? Now that the fantasy had shattered? She wanted me back. Let me guess, I said, my voice flat. She didn't tell him she was married, did she? Emily was quiet. I laughed short, humorless. Unbelievable. Lisa had walked out of our marriage, thinking she could just start fresh, like none of it mattered. But reality had finally caught up with her. And suddenly, I wasn't just her backup plan. I was her only plan. When she finally showed up, I was expecting her after that. I knew Lisa well enough to know that she wasn't going to stop at texts and calls. She was going to show up. And 2 nights later, she did. It was late, past 10, when the doorbell rang. I already knew who it was before I even checked. When I opened the door, there she was. Lisa. She looked different. Not in some dramatic way, but in the way people do when they've been through something and didn't come out on top. She wasn't wearing makeup. Her hair was pulled into a messy ponytail, and her clothes, usually so carefully chosen, looked like she had just thrown on whatever was closest. But it was her eyes that really got me. She looked lost. Mark, she breathed, as if she couldn't believe I was actually standing in front of her. I didn't say anything. She swallowed, shifting on her feet. I know I messed up. I crossed my arms, leaning against the doorframe. Yeah, Lisa. You did. She flinched. There was a time when that would have broken me, to see her hurting, to see regret in her face. But not anymore. You don't understand, she rushed out. I thought I wanted something else. I don't know what I thought. But I was wrong. I miss you, Mark. I miss us. I let out a slow breath, shaking my head. Lisa, you didn't think you wanted something else. You did want something else. You left. You chose him over me. She looked down, her hands trembling. He wasn't what I thought. Of course he wasn't. Because fantasy never is. You hurt me, Lisa, I said quietly. You didn't just leave, you lied. You made me feel like I was the problem. And now that things didn't work out the way you wanted, you expect me to just let you back in. Tears welled up in her eyes. I waited for her to argue, to make excuses. Instead, she whispered, I don't know what I expect. I nodded, pushing off the doorframe. Yeah, me neither. Then, without another word, I stepped back and closed the door in her face. I stood there, listening to her shaky breath on the other side. She didn't knock again, didn't try to stop me. Eventually, I heard her footsteps retreat. And just like that, Lisa was finally gone. For good. Or so I thought. Because what she did next, that was something I never saw coming. Closing that door should have been the end of it. I had walked away. I had made my decision. Lisa had chosen to leave, and now she was facing the consequences. But something told me, deep down, I hadn't seen the last of her. And I was right. For a week, nothing happened. No calls. No texts. No surprise visits. It was quiet, too quiet. It almost felt unnatural, like the calm before a storm. And sure enough, the storm arrived. It started with a message. Not from Lisa. From Emily. Mark, I think you need to know something. That was all she said. No context. No explanation. I frowned, debating whether I should even respond. After all, I had washed my hands of this mess. But curiosity got the better of me. What? I typed back. She read it immediately. Then, after a long pause, she sent a screenshot. It was a Facebook post. A long one. From Lisa. And it was a public one. I hesitated before reading it, my pulse picking up. Lisa Jensen. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to air my personal struggles online, but I feel like I need to share my truth. Sometimes, we don't realize what we have until it's gone. Sometimes, we make mistakes. I made one of the biggest mistakes of my life by walking away from my marriage. I thought I needed something new, something exciting, but what I really needed was to appreciate what I already had. Love isn't always about chasing the next thrill. It's about standing by the person who's been there for you through everything. I hurt the man who loved me the most. And now, I can only hope for forgiveness. I read it twice. Then a third time. And then, I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was pathetic. Lisa wasn't just reaching out to me privately anymore. She was trying to control the narrative. Trying to paint herself as the poor, misguided wife who had lost her way, but had now seen the light. It was a strategy. A desperate attempt to win sympathy, not just from me, but from everyone. And it was working. I scrolled through the comments, shaking my head as I read them. It takes a lot of courage to admit when you're wrong. Stay strong, girl. True love always finds a way back. If he really loved you, he'd understand. Men always get scared when a woman finds herself. You deserve happiness. That last one? That one nearly made me put my phone through the wall. I clenched my jaw, my fingers tightening around my phone. Lisa wasn't just asking for forgiveness. She was trying to rewrite history. And worse? She was making it look like I was the bad guy if I didn't take her back. The backlash begins. The fallout started immediately. I woke up the next morning to texts, dozens of them. Some from mutual friends. Some from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Dude, is everything okay? Just saw Lisa's post. Mark, man, think about this. Everyone makes mistakes. Bro, don't be an idiot. She's obviously trying to make things right. I ignored them. Deleted them. But then my mother called. And that's when I knew Lisa had crossed a line. Mark, my mom's voice was soft, hesitant. Lisa reached out to me. I squeezed my eyes shut. Of course she did. She's really struggling, honey. She said she regrets everything. I sighed, rubbing a hand over my face. Mom, she's manipulating you. I don't know, she admitted. Maybe. But she's not wrong about one thing. You two built something real. I don't want you to make a decision you'll regret later. Regret. That word sat in my chest like a weight. I had already lived with regret. Regret for ignoring the signs. Regret for trying to fix something that had been broken long before she walked out that door. And now? Now Lisa wanted me to regret walking away. She wanted me to doubt myself, to feel guilty, to question whether I had really done the right thing. And for a brief moment, it almost worked. Almost. Until I got the final message. The message that ended everything. Later that night, after ignoring more calls than I could count, another text came through. This one wasn't from Lisa. It was from her ex, the guy she had left me for. I stared at the name on the screen, my heartbeat quickening. Why the hell was he texting me? Against my better judgment, I opened it. Hey, man, I don't know if you care, but you should know Lisa's only crawling back to you because she found out I'm engaged. Thought you should hear it from me instead of her. Good luck. I read it once, then twice. Then, slowly, I exhaled and smiled. Because now I knew the truth. Lisa hadn't had some grand epiphany. She wasn't drowning in regret because she missed me. She just hated losing. And now that she had no other option, I was plan B. But I had news for Lisa. I wasn't an option. I wasn't some backup plan waiting in the wings. And I sure as hell wasn't hers to reclaim. So, I did the only thing left to do. I sent one final message. Lisa, stop. This isn't love. This is just you realizing you made the wrong choice. But that's not my problem anymore. You walked away from our life. I've moved on. And now? So should you. Then, I blocked her. For good. No second chances. No long-winded arguments. No dramatic final words. Just silence. Because some people don't deserve closure. Some people don't deserve a second chance. And Lisa? She was one of them. The final goodbye. I'd like to say that was the last I ever heard from Lisa. That she faded into the past, just another lesson learned. But life doesn't always wrap things up neatly. Sometimes, the past has a way of creeping back in when you least expect it. And Lisa? She still had one final trick up her sleeve. And I never saw it coming. For a while, after that final message, things were quiet. Lisa was gone. No more texts, no more late-night calls, no more manipulative Facebook posts trying to rewrite history. It was as if she had finally accepted reality and moved on. Or so I thought. The thing about people like Lisa? They never truly accept defeat. They just regroup, recalculate, and come back with a new strategy. And I walked straight into her next trap. It started with a letter. Not a text, not an email, an actual letter, delivered straight to my door in a crisp white envelope. I almost threw it away without opening it, assuming it was another desperate plea for reconciliation. But curiosity got the better of me. So, I opened it. And what I read, it wasn't what I expected. Mark, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I get it. I hurt you, and there's no excuse for that. But this isn't about us. This is about something much bigger. Something I can't ignore. I need to talk to you. Not for me, but for you. Please, just give me one conversation. If you never want to hear from me again after that, I'll respect it. But I promise, this isn't what you think. Lisa. I stared at the letter, turning the words over in my mind. This wasn't her usual guilt tripping. There were no professions of love, no emotional manipulation, just a vague, unsettling message that something bigger was going on. And against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her. The meeting that changed everything. We met at a quiet cafe downtown. It was neutral territory, public enough that I didn't feel trapped, but not so crowded that we'd run into anyone we knew. Lisa was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table, her fingers wrapped around a cup of tea. She looked different. Tired. Almost fragile. Not that I let that affect me. I sat across from her without a word, waiting. If she had something to say, she'd have to be the one to start. She shifted, licking her lips like she was trying to find the right words. Mark, thanks for coming. I said nothing. She took a deep breath. I need to tell you the truth about why I left. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, you mean it wasn't because you thought you could do better than me? She winced, but didn't argue. That's part of it, she admitted. But there's more. I crossed my arms. Go on. She hesitated. Then, finally, she dropped the bomb. I'm pregnant. The moment my world tilted, I felt the floor shift beneath me. The air in my lungs turned heavy. Pregnant. The word echoed in my head, bouncing around, refusing to settle. My mouth went dry. Is it? She shook her head before I could even finish the question. It's not yours. I exhaled sharply, gripping the edge of the table. Of course it wasn't. Of course. I leaned back, laughing bitterly. Let me guess. You thought he was the love of your life. Thought you'd ride off into the sunset together. And then what? The second he found out you were pregnant, he bailed. Lisa flinched. And that told me everything. I shook my head, my jaw tightening. Unbelievable. She swallowed, her fingers tightening around her cup. Mark, I don't know what to do. I let out a slow, measured breath. You do what every adult does when they make a mess of their life. You deal with it. Her eyes filled with tears. I'm scared. I sighed, rubbing a hand down my face. I wasn't heartless. As much as Lisa had hurt me, I wasn't the kind of person to kick someone when they were already down. But that didn't mean I was going to save her. That's not my problem, Lisa, I said, my voice softer than before. You made your choice. You walked away from me, from our life, for someone else. And now? Now you're dealing with the consequences of that decision. She nodded, blinking rapidly to keep the tears from spilling over. I know. I just needed you to know. I studied her for a long moment. Then, I stood up. Good luck, Lisa. And I walked away. But she wasn't done yet. I thought that was the end of it. I had given her the conversation she wanted. I had listened, kept my cool, and left without looking back. But Lisa? Lisa didn't know when to stop. Because 2 days later, I got another message. And this time, she wasn't just asking for forgiveness. She was asking for help. And what she said next, that was when things really spiraled out of control. I thought that was it. That after our final conversation at the cafe, Lisa would finally accept that I wasn't going to swoop in and save her. That I had moved on. But Lisa had a way of pulling people back into her orbit, and just when I thought I was free, she threw out one final hook. 2 days after our conversation, I got a text from an unknown number. It was her. Mark, I need your help. Please. Just hear me out. I stared at the message, debating whether I should ignore it. I should have ignored it. But something about it gnawed at me. Lisa wasn't the type to outright ask for help. Manipulate? Sure. Twist words to make you feel like you owed her something? Absolutely. But straight up pleading? That was rare. Against my better judgment, I responded. What do you want? She replied almost instantly. Can I just come over? I don't want to do this over text. A week ago, I would have said no. A week ago, I would have shut the door in her face again. But something about the way she had looked at me at the cafe, something about the fact that she had no other options, made me curious. So, like an idiot, I agreed. The last favor. Lisa showed up that evening, standing at my doorstep with a look I had never seen on her before, humility. Her eyes were swollen like she had been crying. She was gripping her coat tightly around herself, as if holding it together was the only thing keeping her from falling apart. I let her in, but I didn't offer her a seat. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. Talk. She hesitated. She stopped, taking a deep breath before trying again. I need a place to stay. I blinked, unsure if I had heard her correctly. You what? She fidgeted, looking anywhere but at me. I can't stay with my parents. They're ashamed of me. And Emily said she doesn't have room. I just need somewhere for a little while. Just until I figure things out. I let out a sharp laugh, shaking my head. No. Her head snapped up, her lip trembling. Mark, please. No, I repeated, more firmly this time. Lisa, you don't get to walk back into my life whenever it's convenient for you. That's not how this works. She took a step forward, desperation in her eyes. I don't have anyone else. I stared at her, my mind racing. This was rock bottom for her. She had burned every bridge, alienated every person who had ever cared about her, and now she was begging me, the man she had betrayed, to bail her out. And the worst part? She still didn't take responsibility for any of it. Lisa wasn't here because she wanted to make things right. She was here because she had no other choice. And that wasn't my problem. I let out a slow exhale, forcing my voice to stay calm. I'm not your safety net, Lisa. Her face crumpled, tears spilling over. Please. I don't know what to do. I held her gaze. Figure it out. She covered her face with her hands, sobbing. And for the first time, I didn't feel bad. Not even a little. Because this was what real consequences looked like. I had spent months, years, giving her the benefit of the doubt. Making excuses. Taking the blame. But this was her mess to clean up. And I wasn't going to be her crutch. I reached for the door and held it open. Goodbye, Lisa. She looked up at me, her face red and blotchy. For a moment, I thought she was going to fight me on it. That she would scream, accuse me of being cruel, of abandoning her the way she had abandoned me. But she didn't. She just nodded and walked out. And this time, I knew it was for good. Or at least, I thought I did. Because Lisa wasn't done with me yet. And her next move? It was the lowest she had ever gone. I thought that was the last of it. That after I shut the door in Lisa's face, she would finally disappear from my life for good. But people like Lisa don't just walk away. They don't accept consequences. They don't admit defeat. They find new ways to manipulate, to twist the truth, to get what they want. And Lisa? She was about to hit rock bottom in the worst way possible. The smear campaign begins. It started small. A few strange looks from mutual acquaintances. A couple of cold responses from friends who used to be neutral. But the real bomb dropped when Emily, the one person I thought was done covering for Lisa, called me one morning. "Mark," she said, her voice cautious. "I think you should see what Lisa just posted." My stomach tightened. "What now?" Emily hesitated. "Just check Facebook." I sighed and opened the app, already bracing myself. And there it was. A long, emotional post. Public. And filled with lies. I never thought I'd be in this position. Alone, abandoned, pregnant, struggling. But sometimes, you see a person's true colors when you need them the most. I made mistakes, but I never thought the person who once promised to love me forever would turn his back on me completely. I never thought he'd be so heartless. So cruel. I don't expect sympathy, but I just want to remind everyone. People aren't always who they seem. Some men will act like they're the victims when, in reality, they're the ones who are cold, unforgiving, and unkind. I'll be fine. I just wish I hadn't wasted so many years of my life on someone who never really cared. My blood went ice cold. She wasn't just playing the victim. She was reversing the story entirely, making it look like I was the villain. The comments were even worse. "You deserve better, Lisa. Stay strong." Wow, I can't believe Mark did that. What a piece of garbage. Men like that don't deserve forgiveness. I clenched my jaw, my fingers tightening around my phone. This was exactly what she wanted. She couldn't have me, so now she had to destroy me. The last conversation. I could have ignored it. I could have just let people believe what they wanted. But I was done letting Lisa control the story. So I called her. She picked up on the second ring. "Mark, take it down," I said, my voice calm, steady. She hesitated. "Mark, No, I cut her off. "You don't get to twist the truth just because I didn't fall for your sob story. You left me, Lisa. You lied, you cheated, and when things didn't work out with your new guy, you tried to come back. And when I said no, you decided to turn me into the villain. That's pathetic." Silence. Then, finally, she let out a shaky breath. I didn't know what else to do. I almost laughed. "You didn't know what else to do? So your first instinct was to trash me publicly." "I was hurt, Mark," she whispered. I exhaled sharply. "Yeah, and you hurt me too. The difference? I moved on. And you should too." Another long silence. And then, quietly, "I'll take it down." I nodded. "Good. And Lisa? Lose my number." She didn't argue. She just hung up. Moving forward. That was the last time I ever spoke to Lisa. She deleted the post later that night, but the damage had already been done. Some people still looked at me differently. Some friendships quietly faded. And you know what? That was fine. Because the people who really knew me, they didn't need me to defend myself. Lisa tried to rewrite history, but at the end of the day, she was the one who had to live with her choices. And me? I walked away with my dignity intact. For the first time in a long time, I was free. And that was the best ending I could have asked for.